side are you on?
Mother Jones was one of the most famous labor organizers of the early 20th century. If you were reading the newspapers in the 1910s, you would see stories about her, even pictures about her, quite frequently. Mother Jones is the matriarch of the labor movement, the mother of workers everywhere. She would organize anywhere, in the most dangerous places. Who was Mother Jones? Well, there was no Mother Jones. No one was born Mother Jones. There was a woman named Mary Harris who married a man named George Jones and became Mary Jones back in 1860. She came from a working class family. Her father was a laborer, worked on the railroad in Canada. Her husband had been an iron molder and a member of the Iron Molders Union. He died of yellow fever, he and her whole family, all of her children. The consciousness of being a working class person developed especially in Chicago, probably in the 1870s and the 1880s, in an era when Chicago was certainly the most radical city in America. Chicago in the era of the 1877 railroad strike, of the Haymarket riot. She simply gravitated toward the left wing of the labor movement. This became part of who she was and part of her persona. If I was going to use an epigraph for Mother Jones, it would be freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Because that's when she becomes Mother Jones, and there's really nothing left to lose. She's lost her family, she's lost any kind of claim to respectability, to anything other than poverty. She's truly a dispossessed person. Her life is about taking rage, rage at what's happened to her in her life, and using it constructively, making something of it. It's really quite remarkable how she does that. It was only about 1900, when she was already an old woman in her 60s, that she literally became Mother Jones, chose to become Mother Jones. One way to think about why Mary Jones chose to become Mother Jones is simply options. This is a poor woman, a working class woman. Becoming mother, taking on this title, this respected title of the Victorian era, was certainly a road to respect. Mother Jones took the most private title, the most sacred title of the private world, Mother, and used it to make a public statement, to create a public persona, to deal with public issues. That was the irony, I think, of what she had done. That was the great genius of creating Mother Jones. It clearly was also a persona that working class men and women responded to, and especially her version of motherhood was not sentimental Victorian motherhood. This was a woman who spoke in profane language, fiery language. She was really quite renowned for speeches that were obscene sometimes. Obscene especially when she was talking about, as she would put it, the bosses, castigating them. It was that kind of motherhood, an aroused, angry mother protecting her brood. That was the persona she projected, and workers responded. They had tremendous emotional response to her speeches. She organized men in droves, literally, especially in mining, but also in other fields. Fields across America and across labor. She worked in the steel strike of 1919. She organized women domestic workers. She organized washers of beer bottles in Milwaukee beer companies, all across the spectrum of labor.
Listen for the shouts of the bare-faced miners. Listen through the rubble for a rescue team. 600 feet of coal and slag. Hope imprisoned in a 3-foot seam. Hope imprisoned in a 3-foot seam. Bone and blood is the price of coal. Bone and blood is the price of coal.
She was apparently very taken with mining, with the difficulties of the job, believing that these workers were terribly, terribly exploited, that remedies needed to be seen for that. There was also a kind of romance, a kind of drama about mining. At the turn of the century, something like 500,000 men mined coal. It was an enormous industry in America. It's very, very dangerous. Enormous numbers of fatalities and accidents. And again, terrible exploitation of miners and their families.
Bone and blood is the price of coal. Bone and blood is the price of coal. Bone and blood is the price of coal. Bone and blood is the price of coal.
One thing Mother Jones understood was that if wages were so beaten down, and wages would continue to be beaten down when people were not in unions, then it became a necessity to have multiple sources of income in a family. Again, women working in mills as domestics and so on, children getting farmed out into the mines and into the mills. This is something she opposed. It was always in the language of, we're working too hard for too little, we're being exploited, this has to end, and only we can end it ourselves by organizing. Pretty early on, she became involved with the fledgling United Mine Workers Union, which was only founded in 1890. As other organizers and other officials said, you couldn't control her. She went where she wanted and spoke to whomever she wanted, and sometimes defied the leadership of the union. People described her as being totally fearless. She would simply go into a mining camp and begin to talk to the men. She would stand in front of them, this old woman, this even frail-looking old woman, and literally say to them, if I can be out there, if I can be facing bayonets, guns, clubs, then of course you can. And she would shame men, tell them that if you're afraid to go on strike, afraid to confront your bosses, then you don't deserve to even have women living among you. Mother Jones's appeal was always not just to working men, but to entire working families. To the women of the miners, whom she organized into what she called mop and broom brigades. Even the children of miners, who often were workers themselves in textile mills and so on. She organized all of these people into unions. It was important to organize women and children in addition to men because the success of organizing depended on it. She seemed to be determined to organize across all sorts of ethnic groups. Very often when she would be giving her speeches, there would be people there translating as she spoke for various immigrants, because of course the mines were filled with Italians and Slavs, African-American miners in West Virginia and Colorado, and she organized all of these people. She wanted to organize them into the union. The idea of the family of labor, of a community that encompasses families, is really deeply ingrained in her. This is not just a strategy, though she uses it as a strategy. It's something she deeply believes in, that labor is a family, a community, and that people, working class people, take care of each other. Mother Jones was called the most dangerous woman in America. It's a very specific story, that she was in a courtroom in West Virginia. early in the 20th century, I believe 1903. She had violated an injunction against a strike in West Virginia. She had been incarcerated, and the prosecuting attorney literally pointed to her and said, "There, Your Honor, sits the most dangerous woman in America." And he went on, "She crooks her little finger and 5,000 contented men walk off their jobs," which of course is obvious nonsense. These men weren't contented, but they were, by her, organized and somehow empowered to do this. And in that sense, she was dangerous. It was not a foolish remark. That name, that phrase, stuck with her, that she was dangerous because she could indeed bring out this fire in workers. How did Upton Sinclair put it? She was the walking wrath of God, he said of her.
It was early spring, strike was on, drove us minds out of doors, out from the houses that the company owned, moved into tents at little Ludlow. I was worried bad about my children, soldiers guarding the railroad bridge. Every once in a while, bullets fly, kicking up gravel under my feet. We were so afraid to kill our children, dug us a cave 7 foot deep, carried a young ones and a pregnant woman down inside to keep asleep. That very night, the soldiers waited till us and mine was asleep. We stuck around our little tent town, soaked our tent with your kerosene. We struck a match and the blaze had started, pulled the triggers of the Gatling guns. I made run for the children, but the fire won't stop me. 13 children died from your gun. Carried my blanket to our fence corner, watched the fire till the blaze died down, helped some people grab their belongings while your bullets shut us down. I I'll never forget the look on the faces of the men and women that awful day who stood around to preach their funerals, lay the corpses of the dead away. It took some seamen with all that gave up, where you killed those 13 children inside. I said, God bless the Mine Workers Union, and I hung my head and cried.
Even beyond the issues of labor organizing, of organizing the coal miners, of organizing various unions in her era, one of the things Mother Jones' life speaks to us about is the idea that we're not in this alone, that the goal, our goals and orientations should not necessarily always be toward individual achievement. Mother Jones is all about a sense of community, of solidarity, of family, of people finding each other and finding power together. That seems to be a message that's still very, very relevant and important today, not one we easily dispense with. Every so often people still raise their heads and Mother Jones-like protest important issues. These are people who are very much in the tradition of Mother Jones, I think, who refuse to simply accept the world as they find it, but will organize common people, masses of people, to claim their American birthright of descent. Organizing Illinois with Indiana and Ohio was the single most important stroke of success the United Mine Workers had. It suddenly organized a vast amount of the industry, gave tremendous power to this union, made it the largest single industrial union in America. That took place in part because of the battle that took place at Verdun, the Verdun Massacre as it came to be known, and the events in Mount Olive. The mines in the Midwest were really on the verge of being organized, and yet there were these mines that were holding out in southern Illinois, and strikebreakers being sent in, and miners literally taking it upon themselves to keep scab labor out of the mines. And this armed battle that takes place, and several miners killed, who were not allowed to be buried in the town of Mount Olive, in the cemetery in the town of Mount Olive. So the United Mine Workers builds a cemetery, the Union Miners Cemetery in Mount Olive, still the only union-owned and operated cemetery in America. So that's an emotional core for her, an emotional focal point that she keeps coming back to in her life. That causes Mother Jones, when she's already pretty old, it's 1923, so she's already 90 years old, to decide, yes, when I die, this is where I'd like to be buried. Next to, as she says, those brave boys in that soil where the founding of the United Mine Workers, of really the industrial union movement in America, she would have said, took place. Mother Jones passes away in December of 1930. Certainly tens of thousands of people turn out for the funeral, maybe 50,000, it's hard to know. It's a tremendous labor moment when she's buried. It's a tremendous outpouring. She is sermonized by the pastor at St. Viator's College in Bourbonnais, who gives this wonderful oration about how Today, the workers and their wives and families are shrouded in grief, while in walnut-paneled rooms around the country, great capitalists breathe sighs of relief for Mother Jones is dead.
The world today is mourning the death of Mother Jones. Grief and sorrow of her around the miner's home. This grand old champion of labor has gone to a better land, but the hard-working miners, they'll miss her guiding hand.
You know, I am considered a Bolshevik and a Red and a W and a radical, and I admit being all they charge me with. I'm anything that will change this moneyed civilization to a higher and grander civilization for the ages to come. And I long to see the day when labor will have the destinies of the nation in her own hands, and that she will stand a united force and show the world what the workers can do.